What is one way that you can prove experience to yourself? This is a question I get quite often, is how do you prove the reality exists around you? Because one of the things you're doing as you awake and as you start to experience more beings is to figure out how to trust what is happening. How do you trust what is happening when you've been programmed not to allow it to happen, not to experience it, not to trust it, to think it's a fiction, an imagination? How do you trust what is happening? Well, there are many ways, because people experience in a different variety of ways. If they see something or hear something or feel something or just kind of intuitively sense or dream it, those types of things. One of the things that happens as you wake is you start to hear voices, you start to become clairaudient, you start to experience things in a way that allows you to hear physically. Sometimes it's physical, they're actually physically speaking to you. Most of the time, what you're hearing is the translation of telepathic energy. So things are speaking to you and it's translating into English, and you're hearing it in your mind. You're hearing a voice say something, but it's translated automatically. For example, galactics and fairies often don't speak English. Most of them don't actually. It, Yet people hear the words in English when they do speak. That's the translation of energy in your mind. Your mind is built to take that energy and automatically digest it in a way that you can experience, just like my eyes are digesting the sunlight and how it reacts and responds, how it's absorbed, emitted, or reflected off of different objects. It's translating that experience so that I can see something. My brain does that automatically. I don't think about that, it just does that. It doesn't actually show me the rays of light, the original experience. It doesn't actually show me what a tree truly looks like. A tree doesn't actually look like it has green leaves. It looks like that to us because that's how we perceive the light. That's how our brain perceives it. But in reality, I don't even know what it looks like. I just know that I can see that physical energy type of thing because of how my brain processes it. So when a being speaks to us telepathically, they're giving us information. They're talking to us. A lot of times people will hear a suggestion on how to do something. Turn left instead of right. Go this way instead of that way. Be aware, be cautious of this thing that's going to happen. Do you know so and so is thinking XYZ, and they're feeling what a person is thinking and telling you? There can be many reasons for why they're talking to you, but people will pass it off and they'll go, well, that wasn't real. It was just in my head. It was just in my head. I didn't see it. Most people are, if you see it to believe it, remember, we've been programmed with that phrase, see it to believe it. You're unprogramming that. You're deprogramming that. Deprogramming. So you're taking that concept of see it to believe it and starting to go, wait, I have other senses. I don't just have other senses, I have senses beyond the physical. You know, the word imagination doesn't mean false. It means this idea of something not wholly perceived by the physical senses, something beyond the physical senses. Our brain has things like the pineal gland in that is beyond the senses. But how do you trust something when you hear it? Have a conversation with it. Sit down when you hear something, and if you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe that's just in my head, ask them a question in your mind. Ask them a question. Ask for information. The other thing is listen to the words they're using. That's the one I really like to talk about right now, because I am a writer, but I was terrible in English class. It was my worst class when it came to standard grammatical English. The classes you take up until high school. My first creative writing literature class was in my senior year of high school because they didn't offer it. It was AP English. It wasn't offered until your senior year, and it was one of these classes that was completely different than anything we had ever experienced because our English classes up to that point were pretty typical, focusing on grammar, focusing on these different things that are structure and memorizing words and definitions and the stuff that I hate, the stuff that I don't resonate with. Because for one, people just, most people that I'm around, they don't even use half the vocabulary they were trying to teach us. So it's like, why do I need to memorize this? So my vocabulary isn't as diverse as somebody who would have went to a 4-year, Ivy League school where they have a focus in English type of thing, learning all these definitions and stuff. My writing is more simplistic, more common. I always liked what W.B. Yeats said, which was something to the effect of write for something like write for the common person, but as a wise man. If I can find the quote, I'll find it. But it was basically like write in the language of the common person, but think like a wise man type of thing. And I always resonated with that. Use the language that people resonate with, not the one where they have to pull up a dictionary and go, what's going on? So what happens is when you're experiencing these other beings, they don't always use the language that you use. So you'll hear a word, you'll hear them speak, and you'll be like, where did that word come from? I never use that word. I don't even know that word. I don't know the definition. Look up the definition and see how it applies to the moment, because what you'll find is that you're actually hearing something that has a different vocabulary than you, that translates automatically in your mind because it's all energy, it's all quantum, it's all known, translates automatically. So even if you've never heard the word before, it will translate in your mind and you'll be like, what the heck is that? And it'll go from there. Now there is this thing called like, my guides have told me, especially galactics, are a translation table. They kind of help download translation tables when there are galactics who do not speak English or have little awareness of how we speak. And there can be such a vast difference in the way we speak that you almost need a translation table to be like, okay, that word means this. Because if you've ever studied language, we can have a word, but it can have a lot of connotation. It can have a lot of feeling and meaning behind it that isn't the traditional definition. It's the same with their languages too. So sometimes you need more translation tables and things to match things up. But the experience I had was Doug the juniper gnome. I was driving from New Mexico to Ohio. I don't remember what I was thinking about. I was thinking about something. And he jumped up on the cooler and I saw him out of the corner of my eye. I completely forgot he was in the car. Completely forgot. I was in my own head, doing my own thing. He jumped up, scared the hell out of me because I see this figure like jump onto the cooler from the corner of my eye. And then I look and he disappears because your physical eyes aren't translating it. And then he spits. And I was like, why do you always spit when you don't like something? Because whatever I was thinking about or figuring out, he didn't like. And when he spit, he said something to the effect of, I admonish it. I admonish it. And I went, what? Admonish? That's not a word I use. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. I can't think of what that means. I Google it and it means to like dislike something, to warn of something that is unliked, that sort of thing. They were using a word that I had no recollection of the definition. And I looked it up and it validated exactly what they were explaining to me. That's one of the ways you can prove your experience when you're hearing stuff. Don't deny what you're hearing. Figure out what it means. If you hear a word and you don't understand it, that's a key way to figure out, oh, this isn't me, this is outside of me. Or ask them questions to help prove themselves. There are many ways to validate your experience. If you want spirit art readings, that can help. awakenwithwillow.com. Love you.